Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න. Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න.
අතේ තියෙන බජට් එකට සන්ලයිට් බජට් කැටේ රුපියල් 100ක් පමණයි.
හරිම සුළුයි.
On First at 9 tonight, this Sunday, the 4th of December 2022. Debt moratorium. The Paris Club creditor nations propose a 10-year moratorium on Sri Lankan debt and another 15 years of debt restructuring. Dollar inflows. November tourism earnings surpass $100 million for the first time in many months. Professional support. President Ranil Wickremesinghe urges Sri Lanka's legal fraternity to solve major problems in the country.
It will also give us sufficient understanding, I think, to appreciate each other's viewpoints and to prepare a new constitution which will enshrine the freedoms we enjoy.
Popular decisions. Central bank's role is to make the right decisions on behalf of the country's finances, says Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe.
Why central bank should be independent is that central bank should not be influenced by a popular decision making.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Indivadi Amuwata. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Welcome to your news. In your top stories, the Paris Club is proposing a 10-year moratorium on Sri Lankan debt and another 15 years of debt restructuring as a formula to resolve the current financial crisis. According to India's Hindustan Times, changes of getting the extended fund facility of $2.9 billion approved from the IMF Executive Board this month ranges from very low to non-existent, meaning Sri Lanka will have to wait for the IMF meeting in March.
The Paris Club of Creditor Nations are proposing a 10-year moratorium on Sri Lankan debt and another 15 years of debt restructuring as a formula to resolve the current financial crisis in the island nation. According to Hindustan Times, while the Paris Club is still to formally reach out to India and China, Colombo on its part is still to initiate a formal dialogue with the Chinese government. This means the chances of getting the extended fund facility of $2.9 billion approved from the IMF Executive Board this month range from very low to non-existent, meaning Sri Lanka will have to wait for the March IMF meeting before any aid is extended by them. The newspaper further stated that for Sri Lanka to revive, creditors will have to take a huge haircut with the Paris Club, clearly hinting that the Global South should also take the same cut as Global North, withstanding the inequitable distribution of wealth. According to the Ministry of Finance, Sri Lanka owes 41.7% of bilateral debt amounting to $4.6 billion to Paris Club members, including Japan, France, South Korea and the United States at the end of June this year. The amount of debt owed to non-Paris Club members, including China and India, is $6.5 million, which is 58.3% of its bilateral debt. Credit assurances of both Paris Club and non-Paris Club members are essential to Sri Lanka to obtain $2.9 billion IMF bailout package in order.
Now, Sri Lanka's earnings from tourism increased to $107.5 million in November, which is a $31.9 million increase compared to the earnings in the month of October. According to the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, the country has earned $1.1 billion from tourism during the period between January and November this year.
The month of November saw an increased number of tourist arrivals to Sri Lanka, as the island welcomed 59,759 tourists, the highest since April this year. Most of the tourists in November originated from Russia, numbering 13,820. Indians were the second largest originating country, numbering 10,167, followed by Germany, numbering 5,169. According to the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, earnings from tourism during the month to increase to $107.5 million with the increased tourist arrivals. This number is a $31.9 million increase compared to earnings in October, which is $75.6 million. Accordingly, Sri Lanka earned $1.129 billion as tourism earnings during the period between January and November. So far, the country has welcomed over 600,000 tourists. Speaking at a recent media briefing, Minister of Tourism Harin Fernandes said his ministry expects to welcome around 750,000 tourists this year, with more arrivals this month. He also said the country expects to attract over 1 million tourists next year as the industry is expected to grow in 2023.
2023, my target would be looking at about 1.5 million tourists, but our real focus will be 2024, where we are going to upmarket plus the numbers which we will try to create up to 3 million. And it's possible because now we are looking at different ferry services operating to Sri Lanka, different trails on Ramayana, going into India a bit more aggressively. So we believe we can really reach there when everything becomes positive. With regards to this year, I think if we can end up at 750,000, which I'm quite hopeful we can within this month, starting from the 1st of December, which is today.
Central Bank of Sri Lanka announced that speculation that expatriate workers' remittances to Sri Lanka have been taxed and forcibly converted into Sri Lankan rupees is completely unfounded. Issuing a statement, the Monetary Authority said there are no taxes on remittances and expatriated Sri Lankans are free to hold such remittances in foreign currency form in their bank accounts or convert such remittances into Sri Lankan rupees at their discretion. The central bank further said expatriate Sri Lankans continue to enjoy the current incentives without any change whatsoever. President Ranil Wickremesinghe says all major problems of the country should be put behind and all communities could come together when the country celebrates its 75th independence next year if all attorneys at law join hands. The president said this would have and pave the way to understand and appreciate each other's views and prepare a constitution which would enshrine the freedoms the people enjoy while allowing for constitutional governance.
A ceremony to felicitate President Ranil Wickremesinghe on completing 50 years at bar was held in Colombo last evening.
When you took over the country, we had petrol queues, there was no gas in the country, and several households, including ours, considered alternate sources such as the Daralipa. At the third week of July, we today have no petrol queues, gas is freely available, medicines are more or less available, milk powder available, and there is no increase in power cuts. We should never take these types of things for granted, and we congratulate you, Ranil. I would felicitate you for mainly the following. First, you have never ever worked for self-promotion, but worked for the benefit of the party, the strengthening of Parliament and its supremacy.
We have a challenge when the whole system is being questioned by a younger generation. And more so, also, when we have now the opportunity of healing the wounds of the past or letting it grow. So we in Parliament have decided we'll talk among ourselves to see how we can reconcile issues of ethnic differences, issues of religious differences, the concerns also, genuine concerns that people have that this should not lead to the breakup of the unity and integrity of our state. So it is not an easy task, but it's not an impossible task. What I want to ask from everyone here, this is not only a matter for politicians. I would like very much if we can all get together and put our heads together so that in the 75th year of our independence, that we can put the major questions behind us and be the children of one mother. It will also give us sufficient understanding, I think, to appreciate each other's viewpoints and to prepare a new constitution which will enshrine the freedoms we enjoy, but also allow constitutional government to be carried on.
Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe says the country's monetary authority should act as an independent institution and it should not be influenced by popular decision-making since it is responsible to make the right decision on behalf of the country's finances. Addressing an event in Colombo, the central bank governor said public sector officials should be able to influence the policy-making of the cabinet and parliament in a bid to get the most appropriate policies to the country approved by using their professional knowledge.
The Best Annual Reports and Accounting Awards 2022, organised by the Association of Public Finance Accountants of Sri Lanka, was held in Colombo recently.
Whenever we meet the stakeholders, they always trying to talk about these interest rates are not good for the government, they have to pay high interest rates, but there's a reason. This is also one of the reasons why central bank should be an independent institution without any influence, political influence. The reason is that central banks in maintaining low and stable inflation, that is the key mandate, and central bank should have the ability to make decision on interest rates or exchange rate for that matter. Central bank should be able to determine that on an independent basis without any influence. There's a reason why. The fiscal policy, obviously, it's a decision by the parliament. In a democratic country, people, you elect your representatives, you elect them to represent you and make decisions on public finances on behalf of you. And central banks make decisions, that has to be the right decision, not necessarily a popular decision. When the elected representatives are going to influence, obviously, they would like a popular decision. This is whole idea all over the world. Why central bank should be independent is that central bank should not be influenced by a popular decision making. But central bank should be able to make decision independently, right for the country, right for the country's finances, not for the public finance of the country, but for the whole country finance. But we also are a public institution. It's not a private institution. Central bank, and like any other public institutions, it should be accountable to the parliament. That is why Auditor General has every right to look at the financial performance, look at our performance, and report to the Parliament as a public institution. But Auditor General has no right to challenge, influence the monetary policy decisions. That should be independent. Ministry, for example, is coming under public finance authority in terms of policies as well as financial performance. Because you are accountable to the Parliament directly. Parliament approves your budget for next year. New allocation is there, that's the authority of the Parliament. Then you have to implement the policies approved by the Parliament. But in the policy making of the different ministries and the government policies, although it's the Parliament is the final authority, when policies are made, the professionals like yours have the responsibility using your professional knowledge to influence your higher authority, whether the minister or to the Parliament or the cabinet, and make the recommendation based on your professional judgment. This is the right policy that you, the minister or the cabinet or the Parliament, should approve. Because you all are supposed to be experts and professionals who are supposed to know the subject that you have the responsibility. Representatives are elected by the people and they come and go. But you are responsible people, professionals. When you listen to some of the debates going on right now, some of the debates that I heard even in the Parliament is that current economic crisis, obviously we, the cabinet, government, also responsible for making some wrong decisions. But it's not only us. These are recommended by our professionals, those who are advising us. You also have a responsibility. That's why you need to understand your responsibility as a professionals. Based on your judgment, if you think the right policy is going to be made, you need to support that. If that is not going to be right based on your professional judgment, you should be able to convince your authority that this is not the right decision. This should be the right decision.
Welcome back. Minister of Ports, Shipping and Aviation Nimal Siripal de Silva expressed confidence that construction of the Sri Lanka Port Authority funded East Container Terminal of the Colombo Port will be completed by July 2024 as planned. Addressing media at the Government Information Department, he added that the suspended construction activities of Terminal 2 of the Bandaranaike International Airport, which is funded by Japan International Cooperation Agency or JICA, will commence once Sri Lanka's debt restructuring process is over.
Terminal 2, the work has been suspended, not because of anything else, till the IMF negotiations are over, because we declared ourselves bankrupt at one stage. So, when we declare we are bankrupt, no lender will continue to give the money for any projects. So, on that basis, JICA has apparently suspended not only this project, about another 12 projects. Till the situation of the country, till the debt repayment is assured by us. Our guarantee alone won't do, because the IMF is negotiating with us and the IMF will set the roadmap, will put forward the criteria, and they will say now the Sri Lanka is in a position to repay whatever the loan which you have taken and which will be taken. JICA has assured us, moment the restructuring process is over, they will continue to give us the money for the phase 2 of the project.
For next year alone, about 9 to 11 aircrafts are going out from our leasing contracts. So I think Cabinet has given us the approval to replace these aircrafts. Obviously, we need to go through the procurement process, and we will call for RFPs based on what is available at the moment. And when we, publish the RFP, we will decide, what is good for the company. In terms of the price, in terms of the age of the aircraft and all that.
Meanwhile, Minister of Ports, Shipping and Aviation, Nimal Siripala de Silva, offered an update on the restructuring of Sri Lankan Airlines.
Our proposition was that first we sell 49% of the shares of catering and ground handling, realize that money and redeem part of the debt Sri Lanka Airline owns, and thereafter to sell part of the 49% of the shares of the Sri Lankan Airlines. That was the proposal. I took it before the Cabinet. But in the Cabinet, this matter was discussed, and the President has referred this matter to the Treasury. There is a special committee sitting on the privatization and the PPP arrangements, etc. All are professionals. They will look at this from a professional angle. So I think within another 1 or 2 weeks' time, they will consider this and give us a professional decision.
The Ports Minister also commented on construction activities of the East Container Terminal at the Colombo Port.
ECT, we are funding from the money available in the Port Authority. Up to now, we have paid advance for the gantry cranes, and for the construction, we have paid all the money as agreed with the contractor. So that is going on well. Every penny we collect as dollars, we are keeping them separately and utilizing that for the Eastern Terminal work. So we are confident the Eastern Terminal could be completed within the envisaged time.
And the ambassador of Saudi Arabia to Sri Lanka says migrant workers from Sri Lanka are the highest paid in Saudi Arabia. He made these remarks during a recent courtesy call to Speaker of Parliament Mahindayappa Abewardana in Parliament recently. During the meeting, the Saudi ambassador told the Speaker that he had suggested to Sri Lankan Minister of Foreign Employment Manusha Nanayakara to establish a vocational training centre to train migrant workers from Sri Lanka, as there are many opportunities in Saudi Arabia. The discussions between both parties focused on future investment and employment opportunities between Sri Lanka and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Now, OPEC Plus agreed to stick to its oil output targets at a meeting today as the oil market struggled to assess the impact of a slowing Chinese economy on demand and a G7 price cap on Russian oil on supply. The decision comes 2 days after the group of 7 nations agreed a price cap on Russian oil. OPEC Plus, which comprises the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, and allies including Russia, agreed the United States and other Western nations in October when it agreed to cut output by 2 million barrels per day, about 2% of world demand, from November until the end of 2023. Washington accused the group and one of its leaders, Saudi Arabia, of siding with Russia despite Moscow's war in Ukraine. OPEC Plus argued it had cut output because of a weaker economic outlook. Oil prices have declined since October due to slower Chinese and global growth and higher interest rates, prompting market speculation the group could cut output again. But today, the group of oil producers decided to keep the policy unchanged. Its key ministers will meet next on February 1st for a monitoring committee, while a full meeting is scheduled for June 3rd. Meanwhile, Russia, the world's second largest oil exporter, will not sell oil that is subject to a Western price cap if it has to cut production. President Vladimir Putin's point man on energy said the group of 7 and Australia on Friday agreed a $60 price cap per barrel on Russian seaborne crude oil after European Union members overcame persistence from Poland. The move by the West to prohibit shipping insurance and reinsurance companies from handling cargo of Russian crude above the cap is an attempt to punish Putin for the Ukrainian conflict. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak said today that the move by the West was a gross interference which contradicted the rules of free trade and would destabilize global energy markets by triggering a shortage of supply. Novak said the Western cap could trigger trouble in the products market and could affect other countries. Besides Russia, selling oil and gas to Europe has been one of the main sources for Russian foreign currency earnings since Soviet geologists found oil and gas in the swamps of Siberia in the decades after World War II. And that's all the news for tonight. Do log on to our website www.AdaDerana.lk and subscribe to our socials to be updated. I'm Derana English. Good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.